How's it going? What's happening, people? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to what we're going to call transfer news. I'm going to try and do something every day because it seems at the moment things are hotting up. As ever, I'm your host, Dan Potts, and I thought what I'd do today is bring a good friend of mine on that you haven't seen for a while. Colleen, what are you saying?
I'm very well, thank you. Very happy to be back on, and it does feel like there's probably new news every single day, even though it's officially not opened yet, the transfer window.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Absolutely mental. But I think this one's going to be big, Colleen. I can't lie to you. There's a big amount of rumours coming every day. And some of these players' prices are going up. It feels weird, doesn't it, that when we went for Pepe at 72, everybody was stunned. That's small change now for what we're seeing some of these players going for. The market has gone mad, hasn't it, mate?
Yeah, I mean, even just go back to the teletext days when we got our transfer news and saw how much players were going for. It just feels like, maybe what 7, 8, maybe a decade ago, the money in football's just gone crazy. But yeah, I still think even with time, that Pepe price tag probably gets a little bit worse as it goes on. But
Mm.
that's the new normal. That's the new normal for now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the new norm. I mean, one player we've seen gone is, of course, Alexis Mac Allister, who's gone today. And, as
Mm,
Snarky Gurko has said here, like, crazy how cheap Liverpool have got him for. Now,
mm,
obviously, there was some form of release contract clause type thing that apparently they've got him for around between 35, 40 million, we're hearing now. That
mm.
is just absolute steal for me and an absolute bargain. And I don't it seem frustrating? Like, Errol was on me last night on this channel, Liverpool fan, talking about how do Liverpool do this? Like, everyone else seems to get stung, but Liverpool seem to just get it right. And they've got another one right there, in my opinion. I think that's a fantastic signing, Colin.
Well, yeah, but I also think the Liverpool situation is slightly different considering if you ask their fans this time last year or even towards the end of the transfer window, they would have told you for free they needed three midfielders. So
Mm.
I think, and after the way this season's gone, getting one in the door early doors can never do any harm, especially as season ticket renewals are coming up and the new shirts are out. But a World Cup winner who was fabulous for Argentina has been fabulous for Brighton, 35, 40 million, you have to wonder why there wasn't other clubs sniffing around. And credit to Liverpool to getting that done nice and early to even prevent that even being a doubt later on in the window.
Yeah, facts. And I think this is a typical signing that is one potentially a lot of fans will look at now and think, why did I let that one get away? Like, what an
Mm.
absolute bargain. That could be one of the signings of the summer. But the one that has gone for the opposite side of the scale in terms of money is Jude Bellingham today. It's no surprise or shock, but it has been confirmed by Sky Sports and by Fabrizio Romano a couple of hours ago that he's gone to Real Madrid. What do you make of this signing? Because for me, there's a lot of people talking about the price of it, but there's also a lot of people talking about the actual sheer quality of the player. And I wanted to ask you, Colleen, how highly you rate this kid, and do you think he can make it to the top, therefore being a good signing for Real Madrid, or do you think that there's still a long way for his career to go?
I mean, so far the early signs are amazing, and
Mm.
the job that he's even been doing at Dortmund the last few years has been phenomenal, especially with star players coming and going like the likes of your Sanchos and your Haalands. And what better place to learn than at Real Madrid? And they're still managing to keep a lot of their core, like Modric, Cruz. Like who else could you learn from? And his ceiling is very very high. So in terms of is it value for money, time will tell. But so far, it could be looking like business of the decade for Madrid if he does live up to the expectation. And why shouldn't he? Why shouldn't he thrive there at Madrid? Obviously, of course, he's still very very young, so obviously I know a culture shock going into Spain and things like that, but he's already done that in Germany. So it's nice to see as well an English lad's take his talents abroad and continually take them around. I don't think we see it enough, especially
Mm.
from players who've come from England. So I'm excited for him. A little bit jealous that he's not
Mm.
at Arsenal, but in my opinion, everyone's going to be a bit too expensive when you get into the 80 millions, 100 millions, because it's such a big price tag to live up to. Because what's success if you look at Jack Grealish? He'll say he's been successful at City, especially this season, considering, he's already got a couple of trophies under his belt. But when you look at the GA, some people might say, well, for 100 million, is that enough? So it really depends on what you're valuing a player on and how much impact they're having on the overall squad, not just the first 11. But I see nothing but him thriving at Madrid.
Yeah, I do, and I think this is a sick player. Like when I saw him at Birmingham, people raving about him at 17. I didn't know much about him. I'm not going to sit here and lie and pretend that
Mm.
I'd watched Championship football. But what I did do was follow him and his journey to Dortmund, and thought, wow,
Mm.
this guy's looks to be a brilliant player. And it wasn't really until I saw him in the England squad and I thought, okay, yeah, this is a special talent. And I wanted to ask you where you see his ceiling. Is it at the level of like potentially names as big as Stevie G and Frank Lampard, or are you gonna kind of hold judgment before you kind of put him into that bracket?
I mean, yeah, I mean, everyone's always going to hold judgment a little bit until you start getting the trophies in or until you continually do it successfully at the highest level. But I don't see why he can't reach the statuses of, Steven Gerrard's and your Frank Lampard's in like an English context. I don't see why not. You can see when he plays, he raises the level of the game of everyone around him, and he's so young. Now it will just be he will have a lot on his back now. He will have, the Real Madrid fans are not the most forgiving fans in the world because, they represent one of the biggest clubs in the world and they expect the best week in, week out. So that's a whole nother challenge he's going to have to take on. But again, I think he probably can live up to the Steven Gerrard and probably even surpass. Maybe this might be a bit of a reach, but on a trophy level, especially when you're at Madrid, he could even surpass, their kind of trophy halls. So exciting times for him. Let's just hope he can keep his feet to the ground and just keep doing what he's been doing.
Yeah, he seems to me to be a level-headed kid. He doesn't seem one that goes out there and starts partying and starts going nuts. And I think for a 19-year-old, you can always have the world at your feet and think, yeah, that could change. But do you remember the hype for Dele Alli? And I never saw that. Like, for me, I thought when he came on the side, I don't know about you, and people will say I'm saying this because I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm actually not. I thought he was a good player. And I looked at him and I thought, yeah, he looks all right. It's like, I'm not sure world class is the right thing, but he looks like a good player. And then people were quoting back then 90 million, 100 million. I'm like, whoa, this guy's done nothing. He hasn't won anything at all. So there is that with Bellingham. It's like, how much is he worth? Could he just dip and go into a form of Dele Alli? Every footballer can do that. But when you see the consistent performances he put in an England shirt, he's doing that before Dele Alli, in my opinion. Obviously, at Dortmund, he was at a better level than at Spurs. And I know people will say, it's similar level. But when you look at what Dortmund were doing each year, they were in Champions Leagues. They were fighting at the top of the table. So for me, to be one of their most consistent performers, Haaland speaks very highly of him, and I believe it's true that Man City wanted him. I think this is going to be a very good signing. And I look at that Real Madrid side now, Colleen, and I can't lie. It looks good for the future. Bellingham, Valverde, Camavinga, Vinicius Junior, Rodrigo, Milicia. They've got some really good players. And I look at, Real Madrid of old and think they were always going for the Figos, Zidanes, Beckhams. They've got that with the Modric's and the Cruzes still, and the Benzema who's now gone. But now they look like they're building for the future in the next few years. I think they could be back, in the next couple, Colleen. I really do.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you. And I think now is a really smart opportunity for them because it's not exactly the same. I know the context is different, but you see how Manchester City have really come along from United. And you're seeing in La Liga where you've got Barcelona who've not been managed financially well since the pandemic and even a bit before that, where, they're struggling they could never pull off this Bellingham type of signing. This is the time where Florentino Perez, for as long as he's going to be at Madrid, for him to start to bridge the gap in quality. Because let's not forget, even though, in my opinion, I don't think that Barcelona squad is the best and that it's going to be very hard for them to recruit considering all their issues, Real Madrid did just fall short to them in La Liga. And they, of course, didn't win the Champions League, which is their bread and butter these days. So it's a good opportunity for them. And why is it not good enough to start with these young talents, start breeding them in with your experienced players, as you've mentioned, your Modric's and your Cruzes?
Yeah, 100. I hear that. And I wanted to ask you about this transfer market because it is mad. We touched on it before and we laughed about Pepe and it's still now being 115 to 120. They reckon it's 100 million that's rising to those prices. Like, I wanted to ask you, has that kind of set the benchmark for you now for every player that is like similar to the age bracket and the high potential or the high ceiling of Jude Bellingham? Is it now it's going to cost 120 million plus? Or do you see that there's going to be opportunities for some of the English teams and some of the other teams to actually look at that and think, no, that's way too much? Because I'll be amazed if there's no English team that were in for that deal. I think as soon as Real Madrid come knocking, you go, like, that's the only team in the world for me that you go, yeah, I'm going there. But I just think that's a hell of a lot of money. But we don't know if it's going to be worth it or not yet from what he's done as his career. But is that the benchmark now?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is, and I think you've kind of got two routes. It feels like you've kind of got to work under the radar and have like really good scouting departments, as we've seen in the past at Southampton or a la Brighton, as we've seen in recent years, and even Leicester when they first came back into the Premier League. Or you have to, start paying the top dollar, and the market is very inflated. It's so hard to say someone's worth 100 million pounds. Like, it's very hard to justify that. You can't justify that straight away unless it's maybe Messi of a couple years ago. Like, it's very hard to justify that off the bat. So it's really going to have to be, if you see in 5-6 years times he wins 3 Champions League, 4 La Ligas, a couple Copa del Reys, then it's worth it, and him being an actual influence in this team. But I think that's what owners are going to have to start getting used to in terms of. But unfortunately, it's this kind of potential of who they could be in their ceiling, and believing in that, and knowing that their club, they doing their part. So the players doing their part, but they're doing their part. Because we look at the example of Dele Alli. Obviously, none of us are privy to his private life, but there must have something been going on for it to have gone off such a cliff like that. And that's the kind of warning signs. And especially if you're a big club in England, especially the top 6, and you're going for an English player, you're always going to be getting, quoted, a couple 20-30 million on top. So it's about balancing the smart business with the high ceiling potential that could really change your club.
Yeah, it seems like it's changed now. It used to be young prospects were cheaper than their prime, and now if you're in your prime, you're going to be cheaper than some of the potential prospects out there, because this is mad money now. So I wanted to touch on some of the other deals that could be happening in comparison to Bellingham. Now, I want to mention Harry Kane, because Harry Kane is one it's getting quite boring, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
It's the one we talk about every summer. Like, as Arsenal fans, I imagine, would quite like to see him leave Tottenham. I feel like he needs to. I don't really understand what he's still doing there. It feels like he's been kept there and chained to a radiator, is the term that I normally use. But I wanted to ask you what you think is going to happen with Harry Kane, because there's a lot of people I speak to and they're very mixed. A lot of them say he's going to go Real Madrid. Some are and replace Benzema. Some people are going to say he's going to go to Manchester United and be that number 9. Some are saying he's going to stay. And I have heard others say that he might go Chelsea with Poch. So there's so many options, man. What do you see realistically happening here, Colleen?
Honestly, it's such a tough one to call, because if you're Levy, you're thinking, right, as considering the perception around him, you don't want Harry Kane to leave on a free next year, but considering how their seasons have gone of late, it kind of sends the wrong signal if you let your star player go for 100 mil. And a part of me has to question a bit of Harry Kane, and I don't want this to come across because I'm an Arsenal fan, but I think he is a Spurs legend, I think, even though I know there's always that trophy question mark, but that's a whole nother issue, especially when it comes to Tottenham. I think he's done the best that he can, and I know he would love to clinch them a trophy, but I don't think there's any trophy barring the Champions League, which they can't win next season, or potentially the Premier League, which is highly unlikely, where it's going to mask all these years of him trying. And I just think he needs to have a bit more ambition. If I'm Harry Kane, I would want to go to Madrid. And I know he wants to beat that Shearer record. I know he wants to do that, but is it really worth it? So when your career is all said and done and you sit back and you're like, yeah, I'm the all-time Premier League top scorer, only for Haaland in probably half the years to break it if he ends up staying at City. And I can understand him wanting to be an English legend and like a Spurs legend, or especially a very big hero there, but I just don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. But he ruins that if he goes to Chelsea or United. So he can't. If he wants to break the record, he has to stay at Spurs, because if he leaves, he's no longer going to be considered top there. They're going to hate him, and then he will still break the record and have nowhere to call like a home after his career. So it's a difficult one. But if I was him, I'd have gone to Madrid.
Let me just remove some absolute moron in here. Listen, people, smash the likes. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10K. Make sure you go follow my girl Colleen as well on her Twitter handle, as you can see there. Let's talk about Harry Kane, because for me, I think there's a situation right now where he wants to go. I think he's made it very, very clear that he wants to go, but at the same time, he's chasing that record. Now, if I'm a footballer, Colleen, and I start my career out and it ends in the 10, 15 years of a short period of time that it is now as a footballer, am I looking at my personal career and going, look how many top scorers I've got, look how many golden boots I've got, look what I've done at the golden boot at the World Cup, look what I've done in team of the season every year? Or am I going, I've gone to Real Madrid. I've won La Liga. I've put myself into a Champions League final. I've won it. I've put myself into a cup. I've won it. I'm looking at that. Like for
Mm,
me, those trophies are more precious to me than individual awards. Now, individual awards can come with those trophies as well, alongside
mhm,
them, for sure.
mhm,
Like if you remember Thierry Henry, the amount of individual records he got at Arsenal through
mhm,
winning stuff.
mhm.
Surely Harry Kane's looking at that as an option ahead of beating Alan Shearer, who, by the way, was outstanding and would be an unbelievable achievement. Don't get me wrong. But is that a trophy you put in your cabinet and go, look at this, grandkids? Look what this was when I beat Inter Milan in the final. Or do you go, this was when I scored 30 goals and beat Alan Shearer's record? See what I'm getting at?
I agree with you 100% because, how many of the reason why, Shearer's record hasn't been broken, and not to take anything away from Alan Shearer, phenomenal striker, but it's because the top players move to where the clubs are being the most ambitious. It's so rare unless, you're at a Madrid, especially in the modern era, where you can stay there for 10 years and continually be raking in the trophies. That's why, we haven't seen it in the Premier League because your likes of your Omris and co have
Mm.
pretty much have left for more success. But for me, I would want to remember a night in Istanbul where we won it. I want to remember, coming back from behind at the Bernabeu and beating Madrid on the way to winning a cup. That's just me. I just question a bit of his mentality if he
Mm.
doesn't take the plunge because he could really force the move. It's now or really never because I don't think they'll let him go walk on a free. They'll either sell him or tie him down to another death row contract, and you know that's that kind of question mark I've got over him. If he goes to a successful, a traditionally successful club, is he gonna rise to the top? There's that aspect, but you're right, Dan. He's got to. You want to look back on your career and be like, I won that Champions League, or I won
Yeah.
that FA Cup, I won that Premier League, that La Liga.
100, man. Listen, Harry Kane, well, Daniel Levy's the problem here for me. Harry Kane, stupid mistake signing a 6-year deal without a release clause, right? His brother's his agent. They're both a pair of morons, as far as I'm concerned, if that's what they're going to be doing, right? So he's stuck there. Daniel Levy does not want to sell him, and we're hearing that he still does not want to sell him, even if someone offered 100 million. But Harry Kane, for me, has two options. He can either, if he's not allowed to go, he's got to stay and try and do all he can to get closer to Alan Shearer's record, and then decide where he wants to go on a free.
Mm,
The other option is signing a new deal at Tottenham, which for me just would prove complete and utter loser mentality from him. Like
hmm
Tottenham are in the worst place they've been in the last 5 years. They've got a stadium debt to pay off. They're more interested in concerts and F1 tracks than they are football at the moment, it seems. Their ownership is a joke. They've got a circus clown in charge in Levy. I don't really see what they've got going for them. They've just got Ange
mm,
Postecoglou. Yeah, highly rated, to be fair to him. He's done quite a lot over in other countries. He's implemented styles of play which is attractive. But I don't look at that and think, wow, he's the
hmm
guy to put Tottenham right on the back track. He might prove everybody wrong.
mm.
But I think
But
it's a poor time to be signing anything at Tottenham long term, in my opinion, again.
yeah, and I think as well that's why there's that kind of whole, in my opinion, anyway, from an outsider point of view, is when you look at Tottenham, and you can even this. I think that's also within the structure of Tottenham, but also within the fan base, because I think there's a big divide of what do we deem as success at Tottenham, because your newer generation have seen them start to get into Champions Leagues, which wasn't a thing for Tottenham before, and they want to build on that. But you've also got the generation, and which I think part of the overall hierarchy is where, well, we used to finish 10th to 8th, played an attractive football but didn't get anywhere, sold our best players. So we have kind of gone a level up. So both the players and the internal structure at Tottenham, and mainly that is Levy, need to decide what is the level and bar of success for Tottenham. And Levy came out not too long ago with an interview saying, okay, I know we haven't won anything, but we've had some of our best moments, and I think that speaks volumes. And that's why Kane has to go, because if losing a Champions League final is considered one of the best moments for Tottenham during his tenure there, it's not sending a great signal for me if you want to be a winner.
Mm. Well, we'll see what happens with Harry Kane, won't we? I have a weird feeling that he's going to stay, see out his
Yeah,
contract. I just do. I just
yeah,
have a really
yeah.
weird. I think Levy doesn't seem to care much, really, if I'm honest. So it's a
Mm,
bizarre one.
hmm
Let's talk about another couple of players that are linked before we come into Arsenal. Maddison and Tielemans at Leicester now see themselves in the Championship. Harvey Barnes is another one. Um, I'm hearing that Aston Villa are going to have a big summer, Colleen, and I wanted to get your thoughts on Unai Emery's job there, because for me, I think it's the perfect club and the perfect fit for him. This seems to be the opposite of what it was at Arsenal. Good manager, wrong people, wrong timing. Perfect timing now for Villa for me, picking up a side that was 16th, 17th, taking them into the European Conference League at 7th place in the league. Linked with Tielemans and Harvey Barnes, linked with Pau Torres and Laporte, I'm hearing today from Man City. Like, these are some seriously good names coming in the club. Like, what do you make of them, and what do you think will happen with some of those names potentially at Villa?
Yeah, I mean, Aston Villa's always been a bit of a weird one since they came back into the Premier League, because we all know Aston Villa traditionally and historically are a big club in England, and just, they are just of that kind of ilk, like a Newcastle kind of ilk, and they should be looking around them being like, we've managed to nab a very good manager in Unai Emery, and as you point out, it just didn't work out at Arsenal, wrong timing. But this is a guy who's won Europa Leagues. He's taken, like, your full fifth best teams in Spain and won them trophies. Now, coming into the Premier League, there's a much more of a competitive mix when it comes to finishing in the top 7 or 8. But he should take, their season, and looking at Brighton's and looking at how Spurs have kind of dwindled away, they could be looking at me like, we can have strong cup runs here, and we have just the manager who has that winning mentality that can help us bring Aston Villa up and bring some good vibes back to the fans. So I think he definitely has the pull to bring in like a Harvey Barnes or a Tielemans if he wanted to, or if that suited his style of play. Aston Villa's main issue will be keeping Unai Emery if he is successful there in 2 or 3 years' time, because then he'll go back on the cycle of taking the big jump to your PSGs like he did before and things like that. But they should definitely be encouraged from this season, considering how crazy it was. Chelsea dropping down. I know there was certain circumstances, but the top 6 are very rarely all good at the same time. So he can see a very good opportunity there. And I don't know about Laporte, if I'm honest with you, but the others, I think, like those kind of players of those ilk and that kind of stature, he definitely has the pull to bring over to Villa.
Yeah, man, I'm a big fan of what Emery's done at Villa, and I think those names that are being mentioned, if they actually do get linked with them, they've got a good 11. If they start to build on that 11 and start to make that 11 into a squad, yeah, they'll do well next season under Unai Emery for me. And I would put money on them winning that Conference Cup. If West Ham can get to the final, Villa can win it. That's what I'm saying. So for me, that's what they show. And they've got the guy to win it, we've just mentioned. What about James Maddison? Because there's a lot of talk on James Maddison leaving Leicester. I think it's going to be clear. I thought he would have probably left even if Leicester stayed up, same as Tielemans. Newcastle, Manchester United, Arsenal, all either heavily or kind of lightly linked. And then there's other moves potentially for him as well. Spurs were talking about it. Where do you see this guy going, and how high do you rate him? Because I like him a lot.
No, I like James Maddison quite a bit. To be honest, I think he'd fit right into any kind of top 6 team, and I think he kind of needs to look at what his ambition levels are now that he can. In unfortunate circumstances, he probably wouldn't want to leave Leicester in a way where he's going to have to go because they've been relegated. They're going to have to get some funds in, but as much as I like him, unless it was for a really cut price deal, I don't see him going to Arsenal. It feels very much like a Tottenham or United kind of move. And even with United, you don't really know whether you're coming or going with them with the ownership potential takeover. It does feel like a potential move to maybe Newcastle, Tottenham. That my kind of gut feeling, just based on previous acquisitions and the money they've got to spend. But if I was him, I would be looking at, this could potentially be my last chance to force a move to a Champions League club and actually play in the Champions League regularly, and maybe get myself into a title run. I mean, he's been there with with Leicester in cup runs and things like that. So he's probably going to be looking for a top 6 club. I just don't see him coming to Arsenal. Not that he's not good enough. I'm just not sure whether we would actually go for him, and I don't think City would either, unless he wants to, kind of do a bit of a Calvin Phillips. So I think he'd have the most playing time at United, Newcastle, and Tottenham.
Yeah, I do think United and Arsenal probably are going to see him more as a squad player, which is mad because Maddison's quality. But it depends with Arsenal on Ødegaard's. Sorry, not Ødegaard. He's definitely going to play Vieira. What's going to happen with him? Because for me, he's the backup at the moment, and we've also got Smith Rowe, and there's kind of doubts on Smith Rowe's future. And for me, Vieira just is not good enough, in my opinion. So I think we're going to look at that as an option that if Vieira was to be loaned out or was to be sold even, then Maddison would fit straight in. Because if Ødegaard's out, there's the drop off there between him and Maddison is nowhere near the drop off of Vieira. So That would be a really good signing. But I do agree that I think if I had to put money on it, it would be Newcastle that I think he'll go to. And I think at 25 or 26 now, he's probably looking at the next 4 or 5 years thinking, Newcastle are going to win some trophies. I'm going to go there. They're going to spend a lot of money in the next couple of seasons, in my opinion. So I think that would be a very good move for him. If he goes to Spurs, I question his mentality, if I'm honest. So I just think going there at the moment is a bad move, considering the other options he potentially have. So I was interested to get your thoughts on that one. Listen, let's talk Arsenal. It's a nice segue into it. There's lots of rumours, isn't there, that Arsenal are going to have a big summer. And we hear every single season, Colleen, that Arsenal got. So it's 200 million. What, 200 million again to spend? Like, where is this 200 million we're coming from? We keep getting. Now, to be fair, in the last couple, we've had actually spent some money. And we've actually got some good players in. And the way that I see it is this, and I want to get your thoughts on, before we start talking about individuals and names, I want to talk to you about how much you think we're willing to actually put into this transfer window. Now, if I take you back to a couple of seasons ago, our target in our process, and I hate all these words, by the way, I'm just going to say them without going into them. Our target and on our part of our process was to get back into Europe, right? And to do that, we spent £150 million and we got Nuno Tavares, Lokonga, Ben White, Tomiyasu, Ramsdale and Erdegaard. So we bought 6 players for £150 million. That was enough to get us into Europe. So everyone was apparently happy in terms of the board and the ownership, right? Then we went into a transfer window where we needed to try and get back into the Champions League. And we bought Jesus, Zinchenko, Fabio Vieira. And in January, we bought Jorginho and Kivior, right? And Trossard. Trossard, Kivior, Jorginho. So that allowed us to get Champions League football. Now, actually, we found ourselves in a title race, which nobody expected, okay? So the way I'm seeing this now is we've got Europe, we've got Champions League. What's next? Title push, right? Title challenge. Your aim should always be to win the league, in my opinion. The expectation might not always be that because you need to be realistic. But at the same time, your aim should always be to win the league. So what are we going to do this summer is my question to you, because a lot of people are saying it's going to go mad. I've never really seen Arsenal go mad. Like, we spent a lot of money over a period of time, a hell of a lot of money, but never really in one window. We're not done a Chelsea, have we, or a United. We've gone mad. So is it going to happen this time, Khalid?
You know, I'm very cautiously critical of the Cronkies just because, you know, it feels like once they got full ownership, they did start to dip their hands in their pockets a bit more, because we all know they prefer a self-sustaining model. But I think everyone, including them, can feel the change and shift in Arsenal. This feels like an Arsenal I've not seen since like 2004. And I don't just mean this, you know, in terms of like, you know, being competitive, but in terms of the connection with the fan and everyone buying the collective vision and believing in it. And I think it's something they're definitely going to want to tap into. I mean, we've seen it with their other franchises, with the Nuggets, their hockey team, and as with the LA Rams. Now, in terms of what is backing and what kind of players are they looking to bring in as two different things, because, you know, who could have expected? I mean, I think there was question marks even before last season had started around Erdegaard. Not that he didn't have the quality, but I don't think anyone thought he was going to be as consistent and take that step up. Same with Martinelli. He had the potential, but we didn't really know if he was going to. And I think our summer signings will be judged on, does Arteta truly believe Vieira can make that kind of big step up into this season coming in? But without a shadow of a doubt, we need strength and depth, like you pointed out with the Maddison Erdegaard situation, you know, at least up front, midfield, and in defence, where it doesn't feel like such a big drop-off, a la Saliba holding, you know, Erdegaard for Fabio Vieira, because we're in the Champions League, and it did feel like we ran out of steam, and I was less than impressed with our performances in Europa League. Now, that might be because mentally the boys weren't interested in it. Maybe they were like, they would never admit that, but maybe they were focusing more on on the title push. But, you know, you're going to be playing 3 games a week, and you can't be hearing, oh, they're tired, they're burnt out. The most elite players play, you know, every week, or a couple of times of a week. So I think world class or top quality additions need to come in each area of the pitch. Let's see if Arteta is and Edu are thinking along the same wavelength. I do trust them, even if it's not, you know, even if it's not going to be, say for instance, we don't get Rice, maybe, you know, who we've been heavily linked with, or Caicedo, maybe we bring someone else in. I will still trust, because so far they've given me the credit to give them, to be like, okay, I'm going to trust you. But I just really hope they don't go back on the momentum that we've built.
They've got to wear the shirt first before we judge a player. Like, do you remember when we signed Tomiyasu and Ramsdale, and everyone was like,
exactly.
what? I don't want these. It's like, hang on, let's see them play first. They might be all right. And they were. So I'll always do that. But what I will get frustrated with, Colleen, and I wanted to get your point, your understanding of this. I understand, right, that Mudryk and Vlahovic were probably not better signings now looking back than Trossard and Jesus. But what frustrated the fans wasn't the fact that they weren't quality or these were better or it worked out for us in the end okay. What frustrates us and worries us and I suppose concerns people is we can't really seem to get our plan A targets over the line. And I just worry that when we're going in for players like Rice and Caicedo and we're linked with Mark Guehi or James Maddison, Moussa Diaby, Vlahovic again, Cancelo, we get all these names thrown at us. How many of those are plan A? And is there a plan B or C? Because if there is a plan B or C, that's fine, but they might be a drop off from that. But you've got to try and get plan A over the line. When you're Arsenal, you're the biggest London club. You're the only London club now in the Champions League. Finally got ourselves back into there. We've just shown that we're good enough to at least push for a title race. We should be in a really good position to be able to get some pulling power now.
No, you're absolutely spot on, and I think I love the work that Arteta and Edu and people behind the scenes have done in the past couple of years. But I think from an outsider's perspective, at least, because we don't hear the ongoing conversations, but it certainly feels like both on an incoming and an outgoing basis, we can never shift people for a certain amount of money or shift them at all or bring negotiate and bring off, like you said, our plan A in. And I know you're never always going to get plan A. You're probably always going to have a short list of maybe 5 in for each position that you're looking at, but as you say, a club the size of Arsenal in the Champions League and showing that they're going to be competitive again, almost bringing back the kinds of people who would be looking to come to Arsenal back to remembering Arsenal as a child, how they used to play. We should really be putting these kind of players in and getting it done over the line without being held to ransom, because we've heard a lot, and hence the Mudryk kind of situation where there's a certain number we'll pay, and if not, we'll walk away and go to someone else. And it kind of turns out a little bit in hindsight when as you mentioned, like Mudryk being the example, but that's not how we want to be doing things going forward, because it's not always going to be like that. So I think this summer will be very much a testament around, okay, can we actually negotiate incomings and outgoings and get our business done early and get the right deals in? And that'll be interesting, because Arteta does seem to protect the club a little bit, as he does. He is employed by them. But as he says in his press conferences over the years, we only want players who want to play for the club. It's very much a structured PR response. So you never really know what's running through his head if we miss out on these deals. But yeah, I think you're right.
It's interesting because one thing no one is actually talking about, it's always Chelsea is signing, Arsenal is signing, Man United is signing. What about players leaving? Because we've got to do that first. If we want to bring people in, we actually have to get rid of some of these guys. So I wanted to ask you, the players that are being rumoured to leave, we'll go through some of them. I wanted to get your opinions on them. Now, I think you'll agree there's some players that have come to the end of their time at Arsenal. Players like Cedric, Runnison, Tavares, Lokonga. They're all going to be moved on. But I wanted to get some of your thoughts and opinions on the players that some people are not too sure about leaving. So let's start with Granit Xhaka. He's had a brilliant season. There's rumours he's going to go back to Germany. Some Arsenal fans are saying, do you know what? He's had a great couple of seasons. It's not really worked out for him in his long-term career at Arsenal. But let's just say fair play to you and we'll upgrade it better. There are some that are saying we can't really get rid of him because we're going to need to buy 2 players in if he goes. He's great backup. What would you like to see happening with Granit Xhaka?
I mean, I've always been a pro Granit Xhaka girl. Can't lie to you. But I do think, you have to know when to move players on, and especially, and also when a player doesn't want to be there anymore. I'm sure he's done well to turn around his relationship with the club and with the fans. But I think the sound we're hearing is that him and his family want to leave, and you'd never want to keep a player who doesn't particularly want to be there. It's just not the right kind of atmosphere you want to set. Yeah. And he is a top professional, so I'm not going to say that he would turn the dressing room, but when someone doesn't want to be there. So I think with that considered, then yes, he should go. I would like to have him to have stayed, and we've still brought in a midfielder, but I think this is a great opportunity to see whether Arsenal will bring in 2, because I agree. I think if he goes, we need to bring in 2 top quality, and then this is where we can see, right, are the Cronkies, are Arsenal now really ambitious, being like, okay, we're going to bring in 2 top class players into midfield, because I think we all know we need at least 2, especially if Granit Xhaka's going and who else decides to leave, or who else we decide to sell. It's a shame, and I would have liked for him to have left winning the Premier League, but I think all signs kind of point to the next kind of step, and you have to be kind of ruthless.
Yeah, I think we do need to be ruthless. And I think, to be fair, we have been with some
Mm.
players.
Mm.
My answer to this is simple. We keep him if we don't bring anybody in to replace him. If
Mm.
we're bringing in a huge upgrade, then we're going to have to let him go. The other thing
Mm.
is, like you've mentioned, and you're bang on, if he don't want to be here, he knows where to go. Do you know what I mean? And, I
Mm.
don't mean that horribly because he's been great the last couple of years, but
Yeah.
I think we could do better. I think we can upgrade. Having said that, I think he's been really good this year. That's where I stand on that one.
Mm.
Let's talk about, excuse me, let's talk about one of my favourites, Tierney. What would you do? Talk to me.
I love Tierney. You know, it's crazy because 18 months ago we're talking about him being the future captain of Arsenal,
Crazy,
and
isn't it?
now and now he can't even get in. You've got Thomas. We've got Thomas Partey at right back. You've got Kivior being shifted out. Listen, it's very. I think it's all very clear to see how Arteta wants to play, and for some reason Tierney can't do that,
Yeah,
or he's not been able to coach it into him. I do like the idea of Tierney because he brings another style of play when we need a defender to come on, because sometimes the Zinchenko doesn't always work. But maybe that might be part of the wider vision of how, we need to be more dominant in possession, and how, completely overturn teams, almost like a City where you don't need to worry about that kind of, high risk, high rewards. I would ideally like to keep him, but if Arteta has this vision of how he needs his fullback to play, then I think the writing's on the wall for him. But I do think he's an exemplary professional and he's a good defender. He's a traditional left back, and
exactly.
Arteta clearly isn't looking for that traditional left back, unfortunately.
I think we've got a great combination of somebody who's unbelievable on the ball in Zinchenko and somebody who's unbelievable defending in Tierney. I think you've got
Yeah.
the options there. And what
Mm.
frustrated me a bit with Mikel Arteta was when Zinchenko couldn't play or was injured,
Mm.
he was asking Tierney to play the inverted role. Why didn't he just allow Tierney to defend and then ask Ben White to do it on the right-hand side? He's got more
Mm.
of an idea and intelligence of that position for me anyway. So
Yeah.
very, very odd. I think he'll go. I do.
Mm.
I'm kind of resigned to that now. I think Newcastle are interested.
Mm.
Also, I'm hearing there's a couple others. I think Villa were as well. So I'm a huge fan of him, and I think it'll be such a shame. And it's more about his mentality that I like as well. His professionalism. He,
Mm.
for me, epitomizes everything I want to see in an Arsenal player. And
Mm.
it'll be a big shame if we go. And if he does go, Khalil, we're going to have to replace him. That's going to be about 30-40 million. We're going to have to replace
Yeah.
a left back with.
Yeah, well, he
Um,
should be going for decent money himself. He's a top quality left back. He just doesn't play the way Arteta wants him to play. So I'd be very disappointed if he goes for south of 20 million. I think that'd be a shock to me. I really
oh,
think he's a top player, especially for Scotland as well. We should be getting north of 30 for him, in my opinion.
100. It should be starting at 35 and goes up for me. For us
Mm.
to say, right, we're definitely 35. If we can get
Mm.
40, let's push for it. Because we bought him for
Mm.
27 or something, didn't we? So it weren't like we bought this kid for 5 million and we're going to try and sell him for 20.
Yeah.
Top player. Emil Smith Rowe. There's rumours that, his future's in doubt, but it looks like he probably will stay. And there's also rumours that Arteta's training him as to be this Granit Xhaka replacement in a kind of more of an 8 role.
Mm.
I want to keep this kid. I know he's been like injury problems for sure, right? This season particularly. But the season before that, he got 12 goals. I think it was 6 assists. He's a hell boy. I think he's got a future. He can play in a multiple amount of positions. I think it'd be crazy to get rid of him, Colleen.
I'm with you 100%. I think, football fans have such short memories.
Yeah.
The season before, even when he wasn't playing, coming off the bench, and I always remember him coming off the bench early in the first half against Stamford Bridge and getting that goal. That was
Yeah,
very
man.
much him, being at the edge of the box, kind of type of, that kind of left-sided, right-sided 8. And I think he's got the minerals there. I think he's got all the qualities. We've seen it. We've seen the minerals that are there. Now, my concern is that when he has now been, in inverted commas, fit and been on the bench, Arteta hasn't trusted him like he's done before. And if you kind of read between the lines of, some of his press conferences and even go back to the All or Nothing documentary, I think the question mark for Arteta isn't his talent. It's, does he have the mentality to, want to push even harder and kind of, stake a claim in this Arsenal XI rather than just be like, I'm playing for Arsenal. I'm kind of good. I've got a few goals for them, living my dream. What's the next kind of step up? And I think that might be the question mark there because, he has the talent. And there's 3 main qualities I look for in a footballer. The first 2 is hard work and talent. But when you don't have them, the next one is availability. He has the first 2, but if Arteta's not trusting the first 2, he needs to make sure he's available. And I know he's been unfortunate with injuries, but this is football. It's the way of sports. It's the way of professional athletes. So yeah, definitely not sell. I think this season coming, as long as he stays fit, we're really going to see the Emil Smith Rowe that we've seen before and even go to another level.
Mm. I mean, we've got a couple of people here. Vic saying Emil Smith Rowe's Everton level if Arsenal are a serious club, selling for 25, 30. A little harsh. Also, Craig saying doesn't play, always injured. I wouldn't pay more than 25. I don't know if he means Tierney there or Smith Rowe, but either way, it's
Mm.
harsh. Particularly
Mm.
Newcastle are minted. Sorry, Craig, I love you, but you got a lot of money. So listen, I think both of them it would be foolish to sell both of them in my opinion because they're the only two cover players I look at and see hardly any drop off in those positions. So
Mm.
that for me would be a really silly thing to do. I wanted to ask you lastly about what you would do. I mean, Pepe's going to go, Maitland-Niles going to go, but what would you do with Balogun and Eddie? Like, what's your situation? What's your thinking here? Because they're talking that one might go, one might stay, both might go, one might be loaned. There's so many options here. Like, do you want to see one loaned or both loaned and then someone come in? Would you want to
Mm.
keep one as a third choice and bring another striker in, send the other one out? Like, there's so many options, man. What would you do?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because we've seen Eddie in the Premier League and we've seen Balogun light up the French league, but the French league is different from the Premier League. And I will always back anyone who wears an Arsenal shirt, but I'm not the biggest fan of Eddie generally.
It's
In
fair.
terms of him coming in, I mean, he did phenomenal when Jesus was out, considering his abilities. He's a different type of forward. I don't see Eddie being sold or loaned because he just signed a contract, like 100K a week or something. So I don't see that happening. So it seems like we're going to say thank you very much. We did very, very well to develop Balogun, and now it's time to reap the rewards. Who is now on a US national team player who's just done very well in France and get a nice profit on him. Sad to see him go, but it really depends on the direction Arsenal want to go in. I would love to have a killer. I love Jesus, but he's not that killer option, and neither's Nketiah, in my opinion. And hence why we've been quite fortunate. We've been able to spread the goals across, the front four or five. It's a difficult one. I don't know where you kind of stand on it. It's difficult. I would like to see someone else
Well,
come in altogether.
I want to see a striker come in, but I don't see it happening. I really don't
Same,
think we're
yeah.
going to sign another striker this summer. I really don't. And I feel we need another different profiled striker. We hear Kev Campbell the other day talking about Lukaku. Vlahovic is being mentioned again. Tammy Abraham before his ACL was being mentioned. And Ivan Toney before his betting was being mentioned.
Yeah.
Some of those players I like the look of, but they ain't going to happen now. So I look at it and think that there's a centre forward that's needed, but I don't think Arteta wants that star. And I honestly believe the faith he's shown in Eddie and the fact that he's brought Trossard to play across all front three positions, I think that if Jesus gets a knock, he's going to continue to play Eddie or Trossard next season. As for Balogun, I mean, I'd love to see him on loan in England. That's what I'd like to do. Go to Wolves, Brighton, Palace and see what you can do up top for them. But if we got 25, 30 million, I think it would be silly not to accept it, if I'm honest, because it was on loan at Middlesbrough. He didn't do anything. He came on a few times for Arsenal, looked better than Eddie, in my opinion, on some of the games, but didn't really do much in some of the other games also. So I don't think I'd be devastated if he was to go, but I would always think, what could it have been? And we've had players like this before, haven't we? Like Bilic Afobe, Chuba Akpom. They've gone on and done okay, but they've never gone to the City's or United's levels. With Balogun, I think I would, if he's happy to go on loan, I would let him. If he wants to come in and be third choice, I'd also let him, as long as he knows he's not going to play every game. That's not a bad thing. But if you're going to do that, you've got to get rid of Eddie. And I think if somebody was offer 10, 15 million, I would probably consider Eddie going, just because I feel like he's always going to be a player that is a League Cup scoring goals against Sunderland for me, So
Yeah.
that's probably what I'd do. If you used to ask me who I'd like to sign, then it probably would be Vlahovic, if I'm honest. It probably would be. I don't think he's had a good time at Juventus, but I don't think that's lack of quality. He's already proven that league that he can tear it up. I think there's too much going on behind the scenes at that club for anyone to have a great season. So
Yeah.
it'll be like Chelsea. So that's what I'd probably do, if I'm honest with you. To round up and to close, I want to ask you what you're expecting numbers-wise at Arsenal. You can give me some names if you want to. It's up to you. What would you like to see happen, and how many players would you like to see come in at Arsenal? Bearing in mind, we're trying to get as close as we can to Man City. It's not going to be one or two players needed.
Yeah. I think realistically 4. players come
Okay.
in. I think a fullback, centre back, and then two midfielders. I just don't see us getting a forward.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I would, as much as I would like to see the likes of Vlahovic come in, but I'm also expecting a lot of outgoings. A lot of outgoings. And depending on if any surprises come up in the market, opportunities, maybe sneak in a fifth signing. But it depends on how much money we have to spend, especially if we're being quoted 100 mil for Rice. The quoted
Mm.
budget, that's like half of it already blown. So realistically, I see four. Ideal world, six top quality ones
Yeah.
with probably about 4 to 6 outgoings. To be honest with you, with the front, like you mentioned, your Cedrics, your Lokongas, and players like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think what I'm expecting is four.
Mm,
What I think we need is six, if I'm honest.
mm,
You've mentioned fullback, centre back. I agree. I think right wing. If Nelson's going to
mm,
stay, that's fine, but he ain't going to be coming on get for Saka, and we've got no drop off. There's a huge drop off there.
yeah.
We've mentioned the centre forward position, of course. I still think there's three midfielders there that all have a drop off when one of them's out. Partey, Xhaka, and Erdegaard. We saw this season when one of those are out, it goes crumbles.
Mm,
So for me, Maddison, Caicedo, Rice would come in and for me be boom. That is Arsenal are serious. They want to get Man City. If you want to come in and get Zubimendi comes in, Tielemans on a free. We're boosting it a bit, but City ain't gonna
mm.
look at that and go, "Oh crikey, we're all
Scared.
right. Don't
Yeah.
worry about Arsenal this season; they'll be fine." So for me, that's what we need to be doing now. Mark Guehi being mentioned, that would be a very good centre back
Mm,
upgrade on Rob Holding. Musa Diaby. I think there's
mm,
rumours that Xhaka wants to go to Bayern Leverkusen. Maybe we
yeah.
can give us
Mm,
Xhaka and 50 million or 40 million for Diaby, who's going to be a top player in my opinion.
mm.
Rumours of Cancelo, but also Ivan Fresneda as well at Valladolid. So there's the right positions and the right links, Colleen. That's not all that's not going to happen, right? We've got to be
Yeah.
realistic about it. We ain't got 400 million. But when I look at it realistically, I do think we need to be spending at least 250 million. This is a window that we're here now. There's no more trust the process for another 4 years. They can't come out with this BS about we're already in phase 3 of 5. Always crap.
Mm,
Listen, I don't want any more process phases, right? We're done. Right, we're
yeah.
here now. We're in a title race this season. We've
Mm.
chucked away competitions. We can't do that next season, which means we need squad depth. And for me, I want to be seeing a busy transfer window, Colleen. And I think that's fair as a fan, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we only have to look at Liverpool and not to, dig them out because they did well to, try and compete with City for 3 or 4 years. But, the one summer they didn't address what they needed to be addressed to keep up the pace. We've seen what's happened. They're no longer in the Champions League and they were far off the pace for challenging. So we can't allow that to happen, especially as we're seeing, Newcastle come in with their financial power and, Chelsea, if at some point they get their act together, their financial power. We really need this is the moment we have to capitalize on to keep us at the top. Because I don't want it to be 2-3 years, then wait another 15 years for the cycle to start again. We really need to put our foot down during this transfer window. So it's going to be a very pivotal one because I'm expecting the same cup runs and challenging for the title.
Fair play, man. Look, last question to put you on the spot. You got three options: Declan Rice, Moses Caicedo, or Declan Rice and Caicedo. I know what
Oh,
one you want, but which one do you think will happen?
yeah. I think it will just be Rice. I would like them both, but realistically, I think it will just be Rice. If they can surprise me, fair play to them. But realistically, just knowing the Arsenal I know, it's
Mm.
probably just going to be right. And also, how much Caicedo is going for, plus how much Rice is going for, will take some negotiating to get both of them in, as well as the other areas we need to address.
Well, let's hope we try for both because it will prove we're serious. Let's hope we don't end up with neither. I didn't give that
Yeah.
option on purpose. I don't want to be pessimistic. So let's hope we get at least one of them. But
Mm.
Colleen, absolute pleasure as always having you join us. How can people follow you and what you got going on?
Yes, you can follow me at my handle across social media. It's the same across all of them. Also on, various other Arsenal and football channels and on the Beat London on Saturday on the radio.
Great stuff. Make sure you do that, people. We'll see you next time. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe. Get us on the road to 10K. I'll be back tomorrow for more transfer news. Until then, take it easy. See you next time and up the Arsenal.